Welcome to the deep dive, where we try to cut through the noise and really get to the strategic heart of global events. Today, we're going to unpack something surprisingly significant, actually. It's Prime Minister Modi's recent state visit to Cyprus. What makes this stand out is, well, it's the first visit by an Indian prime minister in over 2 decades. That alone signals a pretty major shift. So our mission today is to go beyond just the headlines. This wasn't simply a courtesy call or a photo op. It feels much more like a strategic recalibration of their relationship, really strengthening cooperation on, well, multiple fronts, and maybe sending some clear diplomatic messages too. We're going to try and extract the core insights and understand why this specific, bilateral relationship might have broader implications for you, whether you're tracking global trade or environmental policy or just the big geopolitical power plays.
Yeah, and I think what's really intriguing about this visit is how it perfectly illustrates how nations that might seem quite distant can actually forge some profound strategic alignment, especially in the complex world we're in today. We'll explore not just what happened, but really dig into the why, connecting those dots between the economics, the security side, and the geopolitics to hopefully bring that bigger picture into focus for you.
Okay, let's start unpacking this then. The visit kicked off with a truly significant gesture, right? PM Modi received the Grand Cross of the Order of Macarius III. That's Cyprus's highest civilian honor. Now, this isn't just ceremonial fluff, is it? It feels like it speaks volumes about the enduring friendship and the strategic depth that these two democracies are actively trying to build.
Absolutely. The awarding of such a high civilian honor in diplomacy, it's rarely just for show. It's a very powerful public statement. It signals mutual respect, yes, but also a clear intent for a sustained high-level partnership. It goes way beyond the typical diplomatic pleasantries, really laying a foundation for more substantive engagement down the line.
Right. So moving beyond the symbolic, let's get into the more concrete outcomes. A major development seems to be this new 5-year action plan, running from 2025 to 2029. It's designed to guide their cooperation, and importantly, it's going to be jointly monitored by their foreign ministry, so it looks like a blueprint for actual practical progress. Now, amidst all these agreements, one area that, well, it might surprise some listeners, is the strong focus on ocean governance and sustainability. Both India and Cyprus committed to implementing the 2024 APIA Commonwealth Ocean Declaration. Why this specific focus, especially when there's so many other pressing issues?
That's a great point, and it's critical because this isn't just a random item. You have to remember, the first ever Commonwealth Ocean Ministers meeting was actually held in Cyprus just back in April 2024. And that meeting led to the creation of the Blue Charter Center of Excellence right there. So Cyprus is positioning itself as a leader in this space within the Commonwealth. The APIA Declaration itself, it's a key environmental pact. So this shared vision for sustainable ocean practices, protecting marine biodiversity, building climate resilience, it's vital for both countries. India has a huge coastline. Cyprus is an island nation. They both have very real stakes in healthy oceans.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, turning towards the economic side, there are pretty clear plans for boosting trade and investment. They're looking at a Cyprus-India business forum and even a potential MOU on innovation and tech, covering things like AI, digital infrastructure, research, the usual suspects in modern agreements.
Right, and these economic ties, they're being quite strategically built to align with larger infrastructure projects. Both sides specifically endorsed the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, IMS. They see it as a potential game changer for connectivity.
Ah, IMS.
Right. And what's particularly interesting here is that Cyprus explicitly offered to serve as a logistics hub, a sort of gateway for Indian trade into Europe via IMS. This does raise a big question for global supply chains and trade routes, doesn't it? If this corridor really gets going, it could significantly reroute things, maybe create a faster link between India and Europe, bypassing some traditional routes.
And speaking of Europe, Cyprus also pledged significant support for India-EU ties, specifically during its upcoming EU Council presidency in 2026. Apparently, both nations welcomed progress already made in areas like trade, defense, energy, space, and they committed to trying to conclude the EU-India Free Trade Agreement by the end of this year, plus extending the 2025 strategic roadmap.
Exactly. And a key takeaway here is really the leverage, the strategic importance of Cyprus's role within the EU for India. When Cyprus takes over the EU Council presidency in early 2026, well, it gives India a crucial advocate, a direct pathway, you could say, to strengthen its strategic partnership across the whole EU bloc. So it's not just about Cyprus, it's India deepening its European footprint through a trusted partner.
Okay. And then there's the security aspect. Significant shared concerns mentioned there too. Both nations condemned terrorism, including specific mention of recent attacks in Kashmir, and they pledged joint action on a whole range of things: counterterrorism, cybersecurity, defense production, maritime security, even crisis response coordination.
Yeah, and this really reinforces the strategic depth we were talking about. The
Mm.
emphasis on, regular high-level political dialogue, activating institutional mechanisms to actually monitor that bilateral action plan. It underscores a move beyond just making statements. It's about tangible, coordinated efforts, building resilience, sharing capabilities in really critical security areas.
And just briefly, on the softer side of diplomacy, there were mentions of a mobility pilot program aiming to finalize that by late 2025. Plus, calls for boosting tourism, cultural ties, maybe even exploring direct flights. Because it's not just about governments, right? It's fostering those people to people links, too.
Those are always important glue in these relationships.
Okay, so we've covered the formal agreements, the economic plans, the people connections. But to really grasp the, let's say, strategic weight of this visit, we probably need to look at the geopolitical undercurrents. And here's a really crucial diplomatic angle. During this visit, India very clearly reiterated its unwavering support for the independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity of the Republic of Cyprus. That's strong language.
It is strong language,
Yep.
and it's particularly resonant, given the current state of India-Turkey relations, which are, let's say, notably tense.
Okay.
Turkey has been quite vocally critical of India over Kashmir and has shown support for Pakistan, especially after events like the Pahalgam attack or Operation Sindoor mentioned in the sources. So India taking such a clear stance on Cyprus's sovereignty, well, it can definitely be seen as a direct diplomatic countermove in this broader geopolitical chess game.
Supporting a nation that has its own long-standing dispute with Turkey.
Right. A clear signal. And to really maybe drive that point home visually, PM Modi visited the historic center of Nicosia, specifically a viewpoint overlooking Turkish-controlled northern Cyprus. That feels like a very symbolic action underlining India's solidarity. It is symbolic, yes. And maybe just to provide some quick impartial background on the Turkey-Cyprus conflict itself, for context. The island's division really stems from tensions after it gained independence back in 1960. Then in 1974, there was a Greek-backed coup attempt, which triggered a Turkish invasion that led to the northern part of the island being controlled by what's called the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, or TRNC,
Hmm.
which, importantly, is recognized only by Turkey.
Oh, okay.
The island remains divided by a UN buffer zone. There have been repeated UN-led talks over the years, but key issues like territory, political equality for both Greek and Turkish Cypriot communities, they remain unresolved. India's stated position, as per the source material, is support for the UN-backed efforts towards a bizonal, bicommunal federation, basically unified Cyprus with two distinct zones and communities living and governing together. And India opposes unilateral actions that could hinder those negotiations. And more recently, there have been new tensions over natural gas exploration rights in the eastern Mediterranean, so that adds another layer of complexity.
Okay, so bringing it all together, what does this actually mean for you, our listener? Well, this deep dive really illustrates just how interconnected global events are, doesn't it? I mean, if you follow global trade, that endorsement of IMS could potentially directly impact shipping routes and costs for goods you might buy down the road. If you're concerned about climate change, seeing India and Cyprus focus on ocean governance shows how maybe smaller but strategically placed players can drive global environmental policy. It fosters cooperation in new areas. This visit wasn't just about two countries shaking hands. It reflects, shifting alliances, maybe the emergence of new economic corridors, and a more proactive approach to global challenges, from ocean health to regional stability.
Yeah, and I think what this visit truly reveals is how a seemingly, standard bilateral move can actually do multiple things at once. It can project influence, potentially counter a rival's narrative, and forge new economic pathways. It really demonstrates that in today's geopolitics, almost every interaction has strategic calculations behind it. These moves can redraw supply lines or subtly shift regional power balances. Understanding these, well, sometimes nuanced connections is really key, I think, to grasping the bigger picture of global power dynamics and how they might affect everything from, trade flows to regional peace and stability.
So to quickly recap, we've seen a clear deepening of India-Cyprus ties through some very concrete agreements and shared strategic goals. We've noted India's very strong, explicit support for Cyprus's sovereignty, and we've explored the complex geopolitical backdrop, particularly involving Turkey, which adds another significant layer to this whole visit.
And remember, knowledge is, well, it's most valuable when you understand it and can apply it, right? this deep dive into India-Cyprus relations, tangled up as it is with the Turkey-Cyprus conflict, it hopefully encourages some critical thinking. Thinking about how seemingly local or regional issues can have global repercussions, and also how countries like India are, increasingly playing a more assertive, maybe more nuanced role on the world stage.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. As these new strategic partnerships like India-Cyprus continue to form, and at the same time existing tensions like those in the Eastern Med or between India and Turkey persist, how might this evolving diplomatic landscape, this interplay between rising powers and established regions, how might it reshape traditional alliances and maybe even global governance structures in the coming years? What really stands out to you from this constantly shifting map of international relations?